photo, il y a une femme qui prend photo. Ma fille. Merci. Ma fille, ma femme. Merci. To 155 hikers from all over the world. Good luck, gentlemen. Good luck and see you.
Randonneuring is the singular cycling discipline that allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary feats. I think it has the potential to become the most popular cycling discipline because it's so accessible to so many people. However, I think the reason why it hasn't achieved this popularity is that it's been largely overshadowed by the more competitive disciplines in cycling. I believe that once more people are introduced to randonneuring and understand its principles, that it is going to grow in popularity. The aims of this video are essentially fourfold. The first is to briefly introduce the concept of randonneuring. Secondly, to explain the terminology that is commonly associated with randonneuring. Thirdly, to alert you to the updates that have occurred in randonneuring in recent years. And lastly, to introduce you to the possibilities of achievements beyond the obvious ones that are associated with randonneuring. Please let me know in the comments section if I've achieved these aims and if you think there are any improvements that I can make to future videos. In this section of the video, I'm going to give you an outline of what randonneuring is all about. In its simplest form, randonneuring involves riding a bicycle without any motorized assistance and without any outside help along a designated route to be completed within a specified time, and where your progress along that route is monitored by various forms of proof of passage. All road rules have to be adhered to while randonneuring, and special care has to be taken to make sure that you are seen by other road users and that you are able to see in poor visibility conditions. Above all, this is not a race. However, it is an opportunity for the individual cyclist to determine what are the limits of their capabilities in endurance cycling. The distances that are typically ridden in randonneuring include distances of 200, 300, 400, 600, and 1,000 kilometers. These distances were determined by the Riding Club Parisien, which is the governing body in France for this specific discipline, in 1921. Originally, they were designed to be ridden only in France, but in 1976, riders from across Europe were given the opportunity to be able to ride these distances in their own countries according to the rules of the Riding Club Parisien. In the same way, riders from across the globe were given this opportunity in 1983 to ride these events in their countries all across the globe. The second section is to really clarify the terminology that is associated with randonneuring. Now, you may appreciate that much of the terminology that is used in randonneuring originates from the French language, because this is where it all began. Unfortunately, many of these French terms do not translate directly into an English equivalent if you use something as simple as Google Translate. For example, the rides that we do for each of these distances are called brevets, and the term brevet essentially relates to a certificate to verify the completion of an activity. And each brevet is allocated a specific identification number by the ACP back in France. So every ride that you do has a specific identification number. And if you successfully complete that brevet, you are then awarded as an individual rider. You are allocated an identification number to verify that you have completed that numbered brevet. Now, the number that you are given is called a homologation number. And the term homologation simply means that you have successfully completed that specific event and are awarded a validation number. That homologation number is entered into a great big ledger back in France and is kept there for all of time. You can always go back at any time to reference that number, and very often you are able to access that number when you make an application for entry to some of the prestigious cycling events held by the ACP, which I'll discuss in just a little while. And those numbers are really important because you can access those numbers to be able to apply for certain awards within Randonneuring that are administered by the ACP. And that brings us to the term randonneur. And what does randonneur actually mean? If you do a direct Google Translate, it gives you the term hiker, which doesn't make sense. But in reality, it refers to somebody who's either an adventurer, an explorer, or an intemperate traveler. And any rider that successfully completes a brevet of at least 200 kilometers in length is able to claim the title of randonneur. I definitely remember the excitement that I had when I was addressed as a randonneur for the first time in 2019 when I completed my first ever 200 kilometer brevet. Now, randonneuring is also one of the few sporting disciplines that I know of that bestows a superlative upon any of its titles. In this regard, anybody who successfully completes a series of brevets, that being a 200 kilometer brevet, a 300, a 400, and a 600 within a single cycling season is able to claim the title of a super randonneur. I remember in 2020, the year of the pandemic, riding my first ever series of brevets to be able to achieve the super randonneur status. I thought it was going to be just basically impossible. I was so tired after my first 100 kilometers. I couldn't imagine riding any further. But then with encouragement from some of my teammates, I actually got to the 300 kilometers, then the 400 kilometers, and eventually the 600 kilometers. It just shows that randonneuring is an accessible sport, and with just the right amount of training, dedication, and experience, and good equipment, anybody can achieve a super randonneur status. I remember thinking that this was probably the closest that most ordinary folk would ever come to achieving a superhero title. Similarly, the name Audax, which is part of the governing body name, the Audax Club Parisien, essentially means audacious or daring or courageous, and therefore the ACP could have essentially been the Audacious Cycling Club of Paris or the Courageous Cycling Club of Paris. And I know that as a beginner, when you start off for the first time trying to achieve that Super Randonneur series, it can seem pretty daunting, and you have to have the courage to be able to push yourself to be able to achieve that. But anybody can do it, and that's the beauty of randonneuring. And that brings us to the third section of this video, which is essentially elaborating on the basics of randonneuring and giving you some of the updates that have occurred in recent years. Each of the distances that are ridden in randonneuring have a very strictly enforced time limit. The 200 kilometer brevet has a cutoff time of at least 13.5 hours. The 300 kilometer brevet has a cutoff time of at least 20 hours. The 400 kilometer brevet has a cutoff time of at least 27 hours. And the 600 kilometer brevet has a cutoff time of at least 40 hours. The 1000 kilometer brevet has a total cutoff time of at least 75 hours. Now, if you do the calculations on each of these brevets, you'll see that the average speed that is required to be able to complete these brevets within the cutoff time varies from about 14.8 kilometers per hour to about 15 kilometers per hour. Now, it's really important to be aware that the average speeds that you need to maintain to complete these brevets within the cut-off time are determined from the distance covered divided by the total elapsed time. And the total elapsed time refers to all the time spent both on the bicycle as well as off the bicycle. And when you're off the bicycle, that may be time that you spend either eating, sleeping, going to the washroom, getting your brevet card validated. It may mean stopping at traffic intersections. It may mean stopping to have a mechanical repair. So any time that you spend off the bike is also included in that total elapsed time. And therefore, you have to be able to factor in time that you spend off the bicycle when determining what is your speed that you need to be able to maintain to complete the brevet. Now, there are many different styles of trying to complete a brevet. Some people tend to ride really quickly between controls and then spend a long time at the control, resting, eating, and doing all the other things that they would normally do during a stop. On the other hand, there are people that ride much slower and then try to minimize their time at control points to be able to achieve the overall average speed that is required to complete that brevet within the time limit. It only comes with experience as to what your capabilities are and what your strategy is with regards to riding as well as time management at the controls. It's something that you will develop with time, and you will get a feel as to how you need to approach each of these brevets to make sure that you are able to complete them within the allotted time. Now, an update with regards to the intermediate control time points. Now, in the past, you had to arrive at a control within a specified time period. And if you arrived outside of that time period, either too quickly, you had to wait until the control opened. And if you arrived too late, you may not have been allowed to continue with the rest of the brevet. All of those time limits at the intermediate controls have since been eliminated. You now have the freedom to choose how you pace yourself along each of these brevets. The most important thing is that you get to the end within the cut-off time for that specific distance. It's also important to note that the total cut-off time does not accommodate for any increase in the distance beyond the advertised riding distance, changes in the road surface conditions, environmental conditions, or elevation gain along the route.
Oh my gosh, it's there!
Wow. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Joe! Get in there, Wayne. Say hi to Joe.
This is especially important with regards riding on surfaces that are not traditional, such as riding on gravel, as I'll discuss later in this video. The total cut-off times for the events that are predominantly on gravel remain the same as those for people that are riding on the road. There are, of course, Randonneuring events that are much longer than 1,000 kilometers, and perhaps the most popular Randonneuring event is the Paris-Brest-Paris. Now, the Paris-Brest-Paris is an event that is ridden over a distance of at least 1,200 kilometers with an elevation gain of at least 13,000 meters, and this event has to be completed within the time limit of 90 hours. In the year 2023, there were just less than 7,000 participants in this event. It has a very interesting history, and if you would like to know more about this history and would like me to make a video about this history, please leave a comment in the comment section of the video. The minimum speed that is required to be able to complete the Paris-Brest-Paris within the cut-off time is essentially 13.3 kilometers per hour. And remember that this includes all time spent on the bike as well as off the bike. The average speed is calculated from the total elapsed time of 90 hours for the distance of just more than 1,200 kilometers. Paris-Brest-Paris, which I from now on will refer to as the PBP, is not the only 1,200 kilometer event in the world. You are able to ride a 1,200 kilometer or longer Randonneuring event on each of the continents across the globe. Each of these Randonneuring events are regulated by a governing body called Les Randonneurs Mondiaux. The distances in these events are commonly 1,200 kilometers, but may extend to 2,500 kilometers and beyond. These ultra-distance cycling events all have the coolest medals that you can ever imagine. Very often these medals are customized to reflect the nature, the terrain, and the spirit of their specific event.
Did you find it?
I found it tough. The relentless undulation was, I like beer and cheese too much. I really don't like riding my bike at all.
I'm very much in the same.
The ACP, of course, does provide a more generic medal for each of the individual specific brevet distances. And these include a bronze medal for the 200 kilometers, a silver-plated medal for the 300 kilometers, a vermilion or a deep red colored medal for the 400 kilometers, a gold medal for the 600 kilometers, and a silver medal for the 1,000 kilometer brevets. There's also a Super Randonneur medal for those randonneurs who are able to complete a brevet series within a cycling season. I initially collected as many medals as I could for each of the brevets that I completed during my first 5 years of randonneuring. However, I have since become a lot more selective in all the medals that I do collect. I now purchase just the medals of the events that mean the most to me. I would love to know, what is your approach to collecting these medals? Do you collect medals for every single brevet that you do? And how do you go about displaying these medals? Please let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. There are, of course, some events in randonneuring that are not associated with a specific medal. However, they are given special recognition by the ACP. One of these includes the Flèche Nationale, where groups of 3 or more riders ride together over a distance that is not less than 360 kilometers, and they try to complete this event over a time of not less than 24 hours. Now, there are many rules associated with the Flèche, and if you would like to know more about the rules associated with the Flèche and how it's actually run, I will leave a link in the video description to a video that I've made with regards how to ride a Flèche and our recent experience of riding a Flèche in Ontario. The other special form of randonneuring event is the 8,000 meter, 600 kilometer brevet. In this event, you ride a distance of not less than 600 kilometers, but have an elevation gain of at least 8,000 meters. And all of this has to be completed within the standard cutoff time of at least 40 hours. Now, there is a rich history associated with this specific event. However, I'm not able to go into that history in this video. However, I will leave a link in the video description that will take you to a video that I've made about riding that event in Ohio in the year 2024. Now, the importance of riding these two special events is that they are a requirement for some of the more advanced awards that you can get in randonneuring. These are the 5,000 Randonneuring Award and the 10,000 Randonneuring Award. If you would like to know more about how to achieve these awards, or you have already achieved these awards and would like to share your experience, please leave a comment in the comment section of the video. Now, the awards that you can apply for in randonneuring do not end there. In fact, I've just recently learned about something called the International Super Randonneur Award. Now, this is an award that you are able to apply for if you complete a series of brevets where each of the brevets are held in a different country. So for example, if you do a 200 kilometers brevet in Canada, a 300 kilometer brevet in the US, a 400 kilometer brevet in the Philippines, and a 600 kilometer brevet somewhere in Europe, you can then apply for this International Super Randonneuring Award. There's There's also no time limit as to when you need to be able to complete all of these events. If over your lifetime you're able to complete a Randonneur series across 4 countries, you will be eligible for this award. Now, a award that I've also just recently become aware of is something called the Continental Award. Now, this is an award that is given if you are able to ride a brevet on each of the 4 continents. If you would like to know more about these awards, please leave a comment in the video description below. Not only will it give me the opportunity to learn more about these awards, but I would love to be able to share what I've learned about these awards with you. Now, in contrast to these ultra-long Randonneuring events, there are also many shorter events. Events such as a populaire, coffiniering, and riding a permanent. Now, I have to admit, I've never done any of these events before in my short career as a randonneur, so I don't have much experience. But if you would like to know more about these, or you have participated in these and would like to share your experiences and how these actually work with us, please leave a comment in the comment section below, or send me an email or contact me so that we can discuss it and we can try to create a video together on each of these topics.
From the start, and this is our first control. It was quite breezy coming in, but Regan was particularly strong as usual. And we're ready to head out now to our next stop, Sanderson's Market, at 162 kilometers. So another long 80 kilometer stretch for us.
Now, just to make a comment about the bicycle or the vehicle or the machine that you use in randonneuring, any form of bicycle that is purely human powered is allowed. You can either have like a single bicycle, a tandem, a tridem, a tricycle, a recumbent. You can have any form of bicycle and ride these events, as long as it is fully powered by yourself and that there's no motor or battery assistance in each of these machines.
John, you have your key.
These bicycles all have to make sure that they have a minimum of at least a front white light and a red rear light. Now, the rear light specifically must be a solid beam and must not flash. I had to do some research on why a solid beam was used in randonneuring, and it is a very complex explanation. I will not be able to share that explanation in this video, but if you really would like to know more about why we use a solid beam in randonneuring, please let me know in the comment section and I will create a video about the reason we do so. So while it is essential that you have at least one front and one rear light that are both not flashing, in reality, most randonneurs will have multiple lights on their bicycle as backup, just in case there's failure of the primary lighting system. At least you've got some backup to be able to continue with your event and make sure that you're not disqualified and you don't get yourself into any dangerous situations while riding in the dark. Now, randonneurs are required to wear reflective clothing when participating in a brevet. These reflective clothing usually take the form of at least a jacket and may also include some kind of reflective material applied to parts of the body that are moving. For example, around the ankles, on the shoes, and on the pedals. And that just increases the visibility on the road. It just helps to make you safer while riding, especially in low light conditions. Now, while you don't have to wear these reflective clothing when you have good visibility in good lighting conditions, whenever there's poor visibility, such as if it is raining, if there's any fog, if there's mist, if there's a tornado, as we just recently had in Minnesota, you have to be able to have some form of reflective clothing that you can put on so that you can be seen on the road and can be protected from the traffic. While helmets are not specified to be mandatory for riding most of the brevets, I can tell you that in most countries you will be required to use a helmet when riding a brevet. As I've said earlier, the term randonneur refers to an intrepid explorer, adventurer, or traveler. And to be able to be this kind of adventurer or traveler, you have to be self-sufficient. That means you have to be able to take care of all your mechanical needs while on the road.
Oh my
There's a screw, so the threads, you know, I'm lucky it didn't damage the tire beyond repair.
Oh.
All right, so
You're not allowed to receive any kind of mechanical assistance between control points. So let's say, for example, you puncture your tire. You cannot receive any outside assistance from anybody who's not participating in the event. So you cannot get assistance from a friend or family member that happens to be passing by. You have to be able to rely totally on yourself or assistance from other randonneurs that are taking part in the same event as what you are. Once you get to the controls, of course, there you are able to receive outside assistance to be able to then continue on. So you have to make sure that you're able to do the basics of maintenance on your bicycle. You have to be able to repair a broken spoke, repair a broken rim, fix a broken derailleur, fix a broken chain, fix a broken handlebar or even frame, fix a broken gear cable, seat post, seat. You have to be self-sufficient for all of these specific mechanical issues. And of course, any of these things can occur when you're riding for such a long time on sometimes very difficult terrain and sometimes in very remote areas of the world. Riders are also required to be fully self-sufficient with regards to their fluid and nutrition as well as their clothing. And you are required to carry all of these with you during the event. You can, of course, refuel at the controls from your personal support vehicles, such as your friends or family who meet you at controls, but they are not allowed to give you any of that kind of assistance between controls. You're not allowed to have any vehicles follow you during an event because that may cause more of an obstruction to the other traffic and can give you an unfair advantage of completing an event. However, there are situations where this concept of not allowing following vehicles is being questioned. For example, if you have a rider that's particularly frail, or a rider that is perhaps less experienced, or if you're riding through an area that is perhaps not the safest either from a criminal perspective or an environmental perspective, it sometimes makes sense to have some kind of vehicle following you. I know that this is a very hotly debated topic, and I would love to know what is your opinion about being able to have a vehicle follow you if you are perhaps an inexperienced rider riding, for example, in an area that is very remote or has some known dangers. How do you actually go about ensuring your safety, and what kind of argument would you make to be able to either have a support vehicle or not have a support vehicle? I'd love to know that. Please leave a comment in the comment section and let's try to see if we can delve into this a little bit further.
first will be the last. Enjoy it. Oh, good job. Good job.
Now, Randonneuring events are not races and they are not competitive activities. The most important thing with Randonneuring events is that it gives you the opportunity to be able to complete that event under the conditions that you have been given. So whether it's the environmental conditions, the elevation gain, your bicycle, your level of fitness, your level of preparation, how well can you complete that event under the conditions that you find yourself in? Now, there are of course some people that are super fit, super fast, super well prepared, and they are able to ride at maximum speed to be able to complete these events within record time. However, from speaking to them, they don't do it for the purpose of racing, but they do it purely because they enjoy it and they've prepared appropriately to be able to ride these events within record time. For the rest of us that don't have the opportunity to be at that level of fitness or to have that same type of preparation, we can expect to have our own form of race where we are usually racing against the clock to avoid elimination from the event. But the main take-home message is that, and this is something that I've learned over the 5 years, and you'll see if you look back at some of my earlier videos, I really grapple with the concept that this was not a race, and it's just taken time for me to come to the appreciation. It's not a race, but it's purely a challenge for the individual rider to be able to explore their limit.
Now, how beautiful is that? That's not beautiful. Wow.
While the majority of Randonneuring events are held on beautifully paved roads, there's a growing trend for Randonneur events to be held on unsealed or gravel road surfaces. This has many pros and cons. One of the pros of riding a gravel event is that you are taken away from the main highways and you have the opportunity to ride on quieter rural roads. Usually these are less populated by other vehicles, and so it just is a much safer environment. Very often these gravel roads will take you through more scenic environments than that you would experience on the main tar roads. However, riding on gravel is a lot more difficult than riding on the road, and so it is a more difficult experience, and it is sometimes more difficult to complete the event within the prescribed time. For these gravel events, we have tried to maintain the ACP time limits and apply these strictly, even though we host our events on gravel. Let me know in the video description if gravel events are something that your local organization offers, and what is your experience with riding some of these gravel brevets. Brevet cards are the hallmark of Randonneuring, and that is one of the first ways in which you have some kind of tangible experience with a brevet. You are handed a brevet card at the start of a brevet, and that brevet card usually will contain information about the date in which the brevet is being held, the location at which it starts, the time at which it starts, as well as a list of all the controls and the times that they open and close, as well as the final destination point and when that final cutoff time is. You're then able to add your information to the brevet card and also indicate whether you would like to receive a medal for participating in that brevet. And once you complete the brevet, you are then given a homologation number, which is then written on into the space on the brevet card. Now, having a brevet card is a time-honored tradition, and it's not something that I think is going to go away in the near future. However, there have been many advances in how proof of passage along a brevet is now being collected. So we have things called the electronic proof of passage, and this may take two forms. One is either a GPS recording of your ride along the brevet route that will indicate turn by turn how you have navigated the brevet route and made sure that you've gone to each of the controls and the time at which you reached each of these controls. Now, this is a very accurate way of confirming that you have appropriately completed a brevet. However, it's got its own drawbacks in that there are very often technical failures of that electronic device, and sometimes your electronic proof of passage may not exist. Also, backup forms of electronic proof of passage are now currently accepted, such as either taking a selfie at a control point, which is time-stamped, or taking a photograph of a landmark along the course or at a control point to prove that you've passed through that control at a specific time. The traditional forms of proof of passage using a brevet card, of course, include things such as a signature from an official associated with the brevet, a signature from somebody at a commercial organization at the control, such as a gas station or a convenience store that's able to verify that you've been there, a printed receipt to indicate that you have purchased something at a specific commercial entity, or obtaining an automated teller receipt of a transaction that you've undertaken, or one of the very time-honored forms of proof of passage would be to post a letter or postcard at a designated point to be able to say, well, I have been here and I have posted a postcard from this specific control point, and so that'll prove that you have been there, although it may not necessarily indicate the time of which you have been at that control point. I'm certain that there are many other topics related to randonneuring that I've not discussed in this specific video. This is supposed to be an introductory video to give people that are new or have very little knowledge about randonneuring some kind of background as to what randonneuring is all about. I would appreciate if you can let me know in the comment section below if there's anything specific that I should include in any future videos. That'll help people that are interested in randonneuring to take that step and sign up for their first brevet.
Congratulations.
It's a good end song.
Remember, if you've enjoyed this video, please press that like button, and if you would like to see more of this type of video in the future, please subscribe to this channel. Until the next time we meet, please ride safely.